So listen, in the very first class, I think it was the first class, could have been the second class, I don't know, dude. Maybe you remember. You probably don't remember. I said something about a turning point in my life, a big turning point, like that really shifted the way I see the life force, right? Whatever the life force is. But the way I see the life force was when I was I was 25, going on 26. And I was living in Mexico and in the highlands in the south. And I went to this area of Mexico where people have been using hongos or hallucinogenic mushrooms, psilocybin, for who knows how long. I don't know how long. It's just part of the day-to-day realities. In any case, that just shifted the way I see life, right? And so because what I'm observing is that the Western world of medicine and psychiatry and psychology and research scientists and those who are studying neurobiology and neuropsychology are all starting to just explore the psilocybin as a pathway to healing, growth, and expansion in all these very, very fascinating ways. So it is becoming very mainstream and not just this thing that, hippies like I was kind of stuff do or partake in or explore or whatever. And I've been really watching this, using it with people with really deep, deep depression that they can't figure out, or people with deep anxiety, or people, even kids, and lots of different ways of doing it, like microdosing or whatever. But in any case, one of your classmates after class said, "Hey man, if you ever want to talk about mushrooms, I'm your guy." And I said, "All right, we'll do that." And we just never got to it. And so I just want to start out the class by having a conversation with him, just a brief conversation about God. Well, I don't know, God, right? Dude, God? Is it God? Does God look like a mushroom? Yeah. All right, dude. So here, come on up, man. Dude, all right. So first off, dude, you look like a psilocybin mushroom, man.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
It's the goal of the fit.
Dude, what? So hang on. So introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Hayden. I'm a junior studying physics and astrophysics, and shrooms saved my life easily.
So how so? Like, what happened?
Sure. So I'll just walk through like a little bit of kind of what I went through, I guess. So I actually enrolled in Penn State for the first time in fall 2017. And I ended up just laying in bed all day, not going to class. Like, dude, I was really, really badly depressed. I remember there was this one night I was chilling with some of my friends in like Beaver Hall over in Pollock. And I was like, fellas, I don't see myself graduating college because I'm either going to drop out or kill myself. And like, I said that. Like, that's where I was, and that's how deep of a pit I was in. I was depressed about since I was 11, and I went through just a sustained period of not having a love for myself, for the world. Like, bro, life was pretty hopeless.
For life, yeah.
Yeah, so I attended fall 2017, dropped out.
Did you enroll in this?
Yeah, bro, I did, yeah.
Well, that's enough to depress anyone. All right.
Yeah, and then fall 2018 came right back and dropped out again.
Uh-huh.
And then I spent 4 months in an intensive mental rehabilitation center in Atlanta, Georgia. And it really helped me out, really helped me to like reorient the direction that my life was going. But it didn't like get me through. It didn't push me to the other side where I, broke the surface and felt like I was actually living healthily. And that all changed on June 5th, 2019. I took about 1.13 grams of mushrooms, a gentle dose. And over the course of the following 5 hours, I totally transformed my self-image. I learned how to love myself. I felt connected to the world. And my life story has been just a total pivot, complete 180 turn ever since that day.
Dude, I have to take my mask off because you have to just see how I'm smiling. All right. I can put it back on. But dude, that's awesome, man. What did you tell me something that you saw? Tell us something that you saw. When you say you transformed the way you see yourself.
Oh, okay, yeah. So this isn't going to be something that I saw, but the best phrase that I have come up with to explain my psychedelic experience is that the spirit of a golden dragon awakened within me. And now that sounds, pretty detached from reality, but it's really powerful because whenever I think kind of a confidence and like not necessarily regality, but a respectful. During my shroom experience, you have to understand that prior to the experience, my self-image and it's just total trash. And so during the experience, I had these thoughts of, recognizing these traits that were within me and seeing that I had been living a good life and I needed to respect that and, just give myself the love that was due.
Dude. And when you say yourself to love, it's also allow yourself to love creation.
Oh, yes. Yeah, 100%.
That's really what you're talking about.
Yes, absolutely.
You're not talking about love your ego and this person called Hayden and this body and so on. You're talking about
I'm talking about loving all that is. Yeah. Yeah, during the experience, I felt extremely connected to the earth. Like I was standing barefoot in some grass and, I just looked down and normally in everyday living and, every day of my life before that moment, whenever you look down at the ground where you're standing, it's like, okay, there's my foot, and then clearly there's the ground, and there's a separation between the two.
Yeah.
And I felt the dissolution of that physical boundary. Like I just looked down, and I was the earth. Dude. And that's an incredibly powerful realization. Yeah. It opened the door to just love for everything, including myself.
I get that. I mean, I've had that experience with and without shrooms, but really unique experiences.
Experiences like that are also, attainable through like meditation and
for sure.
all that stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, and one important thing is that if you've never like looked around at the world and thought to yourself like, oh, like everything here is just me. If you've never had that realization, everything we're saying just sounds totally bonkers.
Yeah.
It's like trying to describe what being underwater is like to someone who's never even like been wet.
Yeah. Yeah. Dude, I'm with you, man. Well, it's trying to describe God. We have this way, the way we describe God in the West, in a kind of a monotheistic, the Abrahamic traditions is, we describe God as children would describe God, right? So it's like somebody created something. The something must look and I see, and so we create a God that thinks and feels and speaks to us, right? We can't get away from a God in some kind of human image, even though people will say, no, I don't really see him that way, but most of us do most of the time, because we give the God human characteristics, right? But it's the way a child would do that. And so to break beyond that, and so then, of course, the God gets angry with us or is happy with us. It's the same way a child sees the world. But if you live in the world connected to the divine, no longer as a child, you have to see it completely differently. And across the planet, in culture, because this is something I've spent a lot of time studying, right? The way human beings have their spiritual experiences. And the way people have used medicines and plant medicines to get them to the other side. So people describe it exactly how you're describing it, right? They move away from the child vision of the Creator to a life force vision, and the life force vision in every single culture over time is that I am God. Like each one of us is also God, because we are a creation of God, and we are creating God at the same time. And then, so when you're standing on the ground and you realize I am the earth, what you're saying is I am creation.
Yeah.
And when you say I am creation, you're saying I and God are one.
Yeah, and the word that I use most readily whenever I try and discuss this concept is being. I sort of think of being as everything that exists, really. Yeah.
Yeah. Dude, That's it's so awesome, man. This is a really nice way to, in a way to end any semester, because, we live our lives as sociological beings, but in the end we're spirits. And we're spirits inside of our bodies, and in the spirits we're all connected. Our bodies looks different. Your body and my body and different body, but in the end we're the spirit, and we're the same spirit. We're incarnations of the same spirit, and so it's a really nice. By the way, the first time when I had the same experience on shrooms, and I entered into my experience as an atheist. Like I would have said to anybody, I'm an atheist. I mean, this is just silly, this idea of God, right? And the next morning I woke up understanding creation, understanding that I didn't understand creation, and I didn't understand the terrestrial world nor the heavens and how they're all connected. And I would say, I'm still an atheist in the way that, like, I don't see creation in the way that most people who see themselves theists see it. But I just started praying. I pray all day long. Now I just pray. I pray to the life force all day long, man. It's just my thing.
Good stuff,
dude. And you don't have to do shrooms very often, right? Like,
oh no, yeah, it's really like. I could have just taken shrooms the one time and just had it been that for life. Yep. Seriously.
Yep. Same here. Yeah, same here. I did it a few more times just to see, just whatever.
To explore.
Yeah, to explore, but I never had to.
Yeah, and that first time is like the paradigm shifting, truly life altering experience. And like nothing's the same after.
Oh, man. And depression has never, it's just like gone?
Well, I still like struggle, but I'm absolutely nowhere close to where I used to be.
Yeah? Okay.
Like nowhere close. I always describe like going to Atlanta for 4 months and going through mental health rehabilitation. I learned a ton about mental illness and just normal human experience and how that sort of, relates to mental illness.
Yep.
I would say that there's this like baseline of healthy living, right? And depressed people tend to like go down here. They waver back and forth and they never breach the line.
Yeah.
Where I am now is like, I'm pretty healthily like above the line and, maybe I dip down a little bit, but I'm nowhere near where I used to be. Like the shift, it has been permanent and totally life-changing. Like I just ask, you fellas, try to imagine being depressed for 8.5 years and like being treatment resistant. So going to therapists like for years, taking all kinds of medications with like shitty side effects, honestly, and then being free. Bro, I don't take any meds now. I'm out. I'm done. Dude. There was this one night, a month or two after the experience, where I was laying in bed and I just had this realization that I was free, and I just started crying, dude.
Oh.
Like, it was just so cathartic.
Dude, that is awesome, man. That is so awesome. Dude. Yeah. This is what people are discovering, right? This is.
Oh yeah.
Of course, you're following it. I'm like every day I'm reading about some new study that's like, oh my, just free us from the pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah, dude. So, like, two things. One, psychiatry is broken. As someone who has been through like the system, like psychiatrists are desperate for some new cure because right now stuff is not working and mental health is just on the rise. Mental health disorders. And there are studies coming out, and I'm fairly certain there was a Johns Hopkins study. I might have some bits of this incorrect, but 2/3 of all study participants, and all of them were treatment-resistant, depressed people, 2/3 reported it as the most powerful experience of their life. Yep. And that's like up there with getting married, having a kid.
Yeah.
That's how powerful it is.
Yeah.
And then they report positive results and an openness lasting for like a year and greater afterward. Like, my testimony is one thing, and there's more emotional weight to it because you can see me here and I'm talking. But I want you to know, statistically, shrooms are helping people like me who were in an inescapable pit 2/3 of the time, which is just absolutely bizarre.
Yeah.
And for each of them, it's incredibly powerful and life-changing.
Well, it matters here because there are a lot of people in class who, many of us in this room are on psychotropic meds and so on, and we're trying to find our way through for one thing or another. And it's, it's life, man. Especially now in the COVID world, it's really difficult.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sam, one thing that you said up here was sort of about how you see our culture growing a little more accustomed to the idea of using shrooms and psychedelic medication. And, to that point, I think Western culture as a whole is getting pretty tired of the war on drugs.
Yeah.
I feel like there's pretty bipartisan support that says, look, we don't want to fight it anymore. It's been a disaster. Let's cut it out. And what that means is our culture, our society needs to renegotiate its relationship with plants and with drugs in general. And I feel like a visionary in that I see a society with an open relationship and a healthy, intelligent relationship with psychedelics where, those who wish to experiment with consciousness through shrooms could go to a retreat center, and have a guided, really thoroughly, how should I say, a proper experience, not a reckless one. You want to use these things with,
Don't just like people go to mass on a Sunday morning or whatever, you know what I mean? Or go to the synagogue or go somewhere. Yeah. Dude, awesome, man. Thanks for your... It's what do you do? Like Christians do this thing. They call it witnessing or whatever. Thanks for... Is that what they say? Is that what Christians say? What do you do when you...
Sharing,
an altar
sharing
call?
a testimony?
Yeah, testimony. Your testimony.
Yeah.
It's like an altar call. Dude, all right. Thanks, man.
Here, wait. One last thing before I sit down. I have a request for every single person in here. The next time that psychedelics or shrooms come up in conversation for you, or the next time you think about the topic, all I ask is that you remember me coming up here and talking. I don't want to impart on you a particular opinion, but I need you to remember my story. Because, we're going to have to start having conversations about this, and I just want you guys to have a real life example of the positive impact that shrooms can have on someone. So, yeah.
Thanks, man. It's interesting that it's been more difficult. It's been easier recently because science has had that, but it's something that I've had a conversation about, and not as openly as I want. This is the most open conversation I've ever had since my own experience, and that was 36 years ago or so. So, yeah, because we shut it down, man. Anyway, thanks, bro. Hey, so here's where we're at. I think what I want to do is just answer some questions. It's the last day of the semester. Let me answer some questions that you haven't had a chance to ask all semester. You want to ask. You want to check it out. And so, whatever question. So anything's on the table. It can be personal. It can be. I'd rather not ask detailed questions that require data or something. You know what I mean? I don't want to get there. Come on, man. But who can you? Joy, can you take a microphone or? Nita, can you make a couple microphones? Maybe you can come over here. So who's got a question that they want to ask? Dude, right there. No, yeah.
Hello. So, something that we talked about in our World in Conversation dialogue was something that we expected to learn in the class. And seeing as I think it's labeled as race relations, or that's one of the main things. Something that I brought up was I kind of thought you would do a class or talk more about the Black Lives Matter movement and everything that's been going on. So I was wondering what your thoughts on it as a whole were, or, just as someone, I think you have pretty good viewpoints on, or at least engage in interesting dialogue about this kind of topics. So what's your takeaways as a whole and your outlooks on the whole movement and everything?
Yeah. Okay. Really a good question. Hey, by the way, and you should know that, like last semester, I think we did 2 classes on BLM and so on. Just like things are always, they just go. We're always in flux, right? So it's just kind of where things happen and different things that, like someone after last class said, hey, could we talk about stereotypes and racial slurs, right? And words that people use and so on, and just how and I'm like, dude, next semester we're going to do that. So anyway, BLM is a movement. First off, BLM didn't just start, right? I mean, we have to go back many years and see the touch pieces, right? BLM as a movement is, first off, blew me away as how much support Black Lives Matter got as a movement, and back with the killing of George Floyd, right? Like how much and how many people were in the streets. And a lot of you all probably have this idea that in the 60s, in the civil rights movement, the whole country was up in arms and, people were out in the streets and there were protests everywhere. It's like there weren't. There were protests and there were a couple of really large marches, but nothing like what we saw just in the past couple of years, right? And so first off, that for me as a sociologist, I think it's profound how much support the Black community got. First off, we got as a society, to make a profound change or to address the issues related to Black people in particular, and law enforcement and just power in the United States. And the movement itself took us through something that we needed to break through, where people can start to seriously question, what Hayden just said about the war on drugs, right? I've been talking about the war on drugs for 30 years, right? That was a foundation piece in this class in looking at discrimination and racism, right? So it has been fundamentally important to break through something. And we're watching the positive effects of that. And I was really also not surprised, but I was blown away by the wide range of support that as a movement it got. And of course, then we see other movements kind of rise up and stuff, but really just fundamentally, right? And then it dies down, right? It doesn't go away, it died down because it did that movement, BLM, did what it needed to do when it did it, which was lead us to fundamentally question power in the United States and power of the state in relation to Black people, who've been talking about it for years. In many ways, Black Americans have been the canaries in the coal mines, right? Have been saying, like, listen, we need to address state power. We need to address police power. We need to address this. And white people in particular, but also brown people to an extent, weren't really listening to that, weren't paying attention. But now suddenly are. And that really, we're owing that to the rise in the movement of BLM. So it's pretty intense. Shocking, actually, how quickly it took off. And by the way, BLM, people identify people protesting and BLM marches and so on as people link it to anytime you get a group of people and you send them out to the street, there's always a small number of people who are going to break away and commit some kind of act. You know what I mean? So also how the protests and the marches were just so incredibly nonviolent and peaceful, really. And just because you can put a camera on the one area where it's not that, where something's happening, people are battling each other, or someone's throwing a brick through a window, or trying to burn down a store, or successfully burning down a store, whatever the case is, the fact is millions upon millions of people going through this really intense protests, and yet maintaining a spirit and a cadence of nonviolence. And that's pretty intense. That was also that wasn't surprising to me at all, because that's what I would expect. But to see that. So anyway, is that a fair?
Yeah, thanks you for sharing. I also was wondering, with what you said about how you were really surprised by how quickly it took off and the amount of, and the range of support as compared to, like you compared it to the civil rights movement. Yeah. Why do you think, like what were some underlying factors, especially as a sociologist, like why do you think it was able to gain such widespread support? Like do you think it was because of like social media campaigns and like overall awareness, or what do you think made it happen?
Dude, this is a really good question, right? Because civil rights movement, the reason the civil rights movement was able to grow is because people spent lots of time growing the movement, like in the black community in particular, and making links to the white community, and because it's mostly black and white community, spent so much time growing the movement, mobilizing, training people, teaching people, really working with people to really get people out into the streets. Here, with BLM, I think what we saw were decades of people just really struggling against power. And so at the moments that could happen, people were just like, okay, I'm ready. And then, of course, having, phones and the ability to do that. But it was like just decades of people having enough power and courage to get out into the streets and be able to do that, yeah. But it's so fast. So on one hand, I could say it surprised me. On the other hand, it didn't. But it still, it did. Dude.
I just wanted to ask, what's your opinion on the naming of a new Penn State president and the implications that has on the future of Penn State?
Damn, man. Okay. I don't know her at all. I just read a few things about her, right? I think it's awesome. It's from the beginning. I think it matters that they picked that it's a woman. I think it matters it's a brown woman. It's not a white woman, right? Either black or brown. It doesn't matter. It matters. There's almost a way in which it matters. I don't think these. I'm not. You should understand by now. Like I'm not into just like the symbolic. I mean, I'm not into just like putting someone in a position of power because we should do that, right? Like I'm not into that bullshit. Like don't do that. I don't do it myself. Like don't do that. But I think she's obviously very accomplished, and by all accounts, I have talked to a couple people who've worked with her, and like she's very on top of stuff, man. I think it looks from this stage like it's a really good choice, and I think symbolically for us as an institution, I think it's very cool. It's very cool. Yeah. I wish her. I'm anxious. I will be very anxious to meet her, so I will meet her sooner than later, I am sure, and I'm really anxious to meet her. Yeah. Sounds like a rockin' person. Is that fair? Yeah, it's hard to say anymore. I mean, I've known all the presidents that I've worked with. So they've all been in this classroom, right, at one point in time. When Joe Paterno was fired and Graham Spanier was fired, 2 days later, Rod Erickson introduced himself to the Penn State student body in this classroom, right? So like I've been connected. I played in a band with Graham. President Barron. I know President Barron. So, yeah. So I'll be anxious to meet her. Somebody else. Hey, raise your hand now so we can get a mic to you. Who's got a question up here? You got to have a question. You can be a personal question, by the way. Dude, that dude right there. Go ahead, man.
Hi. So, well, it's like actually two questions. One of them is not really super important, but it kind of like I think can lead on to the second one. The first one is I remember like the first day of class, like we talked because you said you had an apartment in Bogotá. So like you go in. So I guess like one question was like why particularly Bogotá of all places in Latin America would you choose to like go and visit there? Again, that's not super important, but like I don't know, just because I'm also.
The answer is chance.
Okay, yeah,
Life
if it was
is
just chance.
Just
so like,
chance. You get to my age and you look back and you see these like really consequential things that are often just random chance. Like, oh my God, okay, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
no, yeah, it's just because, as you know, I'm from there. And then the other question is like, what were your thoughts on what happened, this year with like the protests and everything? I don't know if you got the chance to be there while that was happening, like in April and May, and well, yeah, you know more
Well,
about it probably.
yeah.
So
Okay, but listen, so it's not just there. And this goes back to something I was talking about earlier in the semester. When you think about how I've talked about this issue of global inequality, you need to really understand what, and this is why it's incumbent. This goes back to last class. You can't fix the world, but you got to look at yourself and fix the things in yourself that you can fix, so you're ready, right? Like this is what Hayden did by taking the journey that he did. These kinds of protests that are emerging from the working class, not the poorest of the poor, the working class and the lower middle class, they're happening all over the world. And that's because as we see wealth getting more and more concentrated into the hands of the super wealthy, and we're watching this part of society bottom out, and we're seeing more and more of these kinds of protests. And so Colombia was one place, but they were happening throughout Latin America, throughout Asia, Africa, right? We're seeing this if you follow the protests in Nigeria, for example, over the course of the past couple of years. So I think that's just a wake up to everybody, because what happens in other places affects what happens here. We're not free of it. And so, you can't seal the borders up. This is a global thing, and then it will happen in the United States, as we see. So that's actually a good question. It's an opportunity to kind of say that. Yeah, I think that really matters.
I was going to ask, do you see Kyle Rittenhouse as a murderer or someone who did self-defense?
Man, that's a really interesting. Well, if I want to speak as a... So here's the thing on that, right? Law, we have 10 million laws on the books in the U.S., okay? And we have these courts in which, we are trying to interpret the laws that are on the books. And you have the prosecution and the defense, they come together and they argue it out, right? I don't always think that that's the best way to do it, but they argue it out according to the laws on the books that are available to them and how they can prosecute something or defend something. And the judge is there to try to manage things and as best as possible keep it fair. And try to keep it fair, more fair than less fair, right? According to whatever the laws are. Laws of particular states. The problem is that the vast majority of Americans don't understand, nobody understands the 10 million laws on the books, right? Nor do we understand even the basics of complex law. So the self-defense law is the hardest law to when someone takes a self-defense stance. So what I've learned over the years, because this is something I've kind of looked into for personal reasons, it's the hardest law to remove from that. It's the hardest prosecution to make because it's self-defense, right? How do you argue that something's not self-defense? So I just know this from talking to so many lawyers and stuff, right? So I don't see him as a murderer because murder has a certain connotation, legal connotation, right? But he's someone who killed somebody, right? And you can, at some level, at some point in time, we have to trust that I was, like, for example, I wasn't on the jury. I have not read, the testimony of that trial. I would have to watch the whole trial and read everything in the trial to be able to decide for myself what that is or what he is. Should he have been guilty or not guilty or whatever the case is? And I didn't do that. And nobody else did that. No one in here did that. And so therefore, for me, these are the things that I've learned over time to not even voice an opinion on, because these kinds of things just are incredibly complex. And so I'm just like, so for me, it's like, dude, what kind of society are we in that a 17-year-old kid can have a semi-automatic gun and be like, would ever have that? for even 18-year-old, it doesn't matter. Like, what's the point of this? And then to be going into a city, into a place where there's all this conflict, and be carrying the gun and not having just a human being, this civilian, carrying a gun, and have the police not have the power or the wherewithal or whatever to be like, dude, you can't carry this gun here, man. Like, you can't do, that is a problem for you to have this gun here. And so what kind of a world, what have we become that's not even at the forefront of what we're thinking about? You know what I mean? It's kind of what we talked about last time. The fact of one of these things is so surprising that it's just mind-blowing. So that, for me, is just a sad state of affairs. And he, you know, not only did he take 2 lives and just ruin so many lives, but he ruined his own life. And he lives with that forever, right? And so it's like, just, it's sad. It's pathetically sad. Yeah. Anyway, that's my answer to that. Yeah. Joy, does anybody over here have a question? Joy's got, yes.
Oh, just go now.
You are on.
So I have like 2 questions, and one of them is kind of related to that topic. So do you see like a kind of, I've seen this comparison on social media before. So do you think that there's a comparison to how George Zimmerman was treated after the Trayvon Martin trial to how Kyle Rittenhouse is being treated now, with like being on podcasts and being like touted around and like going on like an interview tour, it seems?
Well, it's just, it's so sad for me, just as a human, as a sentient being, bro, right? Who has touched God at some level, and the level at which I have. It's so sad that anybody would think that we would think that this is going to be a really good thing for us. Let's take this person who's just was part of, right? This whole, going to interview tour for what? Like, for what? You know what I mean? You could listen to, why didn't Hayden go on an interview tour and talk about how he overcame depression? Why are we bringing these people out? You know what I mean? And you know, George Zimmerman, that's just like, oh shit, I'll just let that go. But yeah, no. So I just think it's sad. And yet I have to keep going.
So my second question kind of has to do with something that someone said earlier. I think you said something about it earlier. What are your like opinions on like the labor movement that's happening in America right now? It seems it's like starting to happen with like the unionization efforts. Like I know that a Starbucks in Buffalo is going to be like the first unionized Starbucks in the country, and like Amazon workers are starting to unionize. And do you think that has like any connection to like the protests that have been happening around the world, or do you think it just has like a connection to the pandemic in general?
Yeah, it has a connection to lots of protests. It also has a connection to BLM. You know what I mean? And seeing like how people can go out on the streets. Absolutely. Look, here's the thing. Yeah, those are good questions. This is a thing that allows me to say something. You know, we have created, the extremely wealthy have created a system of corporate capitalism that allows for possibilities of just extreme wealth going into the hands of small numbers of people. And we have successfully cut the legs out from the labor movement in the United States, meaning average people, which would be like most of you all, your grandparents, your parents, for many of you, many of you who are going to go out and get, you know, for relatively, you know, just average or mediocre paying jobs and like not even realize that you're a laborer. And yet somehow we've been broadsided, we've been like convinced to look up to people like, you know, Bezos and, you know, Bill Gates, all these really rich people who have been able to been part of creating a system that would just allow obscene wealth to go to them. And somehow we think like, we look up to them as like, oh, these are really amazing people. It's like, they're amazing because they basically worked with other people behind the scenes to manipulate a system and rig it such that they could be just so vastly, have so much wealth. Like, it's just that and not even think about it. And then be pawns of the labor, be pawns of the rich. So, those of us in here are like, oh yeah, the labor movement, yeah, unions are all corrupt. Unions are corrupt? How about like welfare is a problem? How about welfare? Do you know how much, how many, what kind of taxes Amazon as a corporation pays year after year? How about that? Instead of like looking at poor people who are like, oh, that woman's gets food stamps and look, she just had another baby. Oh, isn't that horrible? Yeah, it is. It's like, oh yeah, that's kind of a problem. But can we talk about Amazon for a second? And the billions and billions and billions that should be paying in taxes but aren't because they made backroom deals that you don't know about, and then you support them? Like, oh yeah, but these guys are like, yeah, but they're really smart. They're not smart. They just made a backroom deal and you weren't part of it. And like, you should be pissed. You would be pissed. If you knew what was going on, people would be really pissed. But they mostly don't. And then they become shills, or they shill for the rich. So I don't know. That sounds like a really leftist thing. It's actually a very libertarian thing. Because libertarians would say, they're not playing on a level playing field. They've rigged the system. And that's not a level playing field. And so therefore it's not, you don't get a fair start. I'm like, anyway, that's that. Okay, how about this? How about a personal question? Anyone? Dude, you have a personal question? Oh man, how personal?
Kind of personal.
Make it really personal. My wife isn't listening, so I can say anything.
Okay, it's kind of like a slash, so bear with me, like a two-part question. So
right.
What makes you truly happy / what makes your life worth living for? Like, what do you wake up every day? I mean, besides your job, like something that's not so physical, something that's like, like either an idea or something that like you really hold on to that like resonates in your heart.
Oh my God, that's such a nice question. Thanks for asking that. First off, the past 2 years have been the only 2 years that I've struggled with. I wouldn't call it depression, but I would call it, and in part it's because I see there's something going on, that we're in a really, really dangerous time. And first off, I didn't know if this pandemic was going to take us over the edge, right? So, I know I know a lot of people that study these. I mean, it's just like, oh my God, we could be in really, really bad shape, okay? And you don't want that. We don't want that. Nobody wants it. You just don't. You don't want anarchism. You don't want shit to fall apart. Like, you know what I mean? You don't. Okay, so anyway, it's been really hard. So it's been harder for me every day to wake up and move forward. It's been very easy. But probably the thing that pulls me forward more than anything is my deep desire. It's what I talked about last class. My deep desire to get to my deathbed, to go through the light when I go through that portal, right? Because there's a portal. It's a light portal, right? I mean, it seems to be, because people who die and then they come back into this world, they all have the same experience. And there's a light portal, and you get to the other side, and there's like this, and I want to be able to go through that and not leave anything back here with some of the kind of sound questions that I have about, like, what is good, what is right, what is all this kind of stuff. I'm trying to work that out for myself so that when I go through the portal, I'm not struggling with those. Like, I'm not reaching back to try to hang on. Like, wait a minute, I got to read one more book, or I got to talk to one more person or something like that, right? So that probably keeps me going every single day. I just have such a deep, deep love for this, a passion for understanding, trying to understand, and doing the best I can. Yeah, and I have a pretty tight relation. I have a pretty cool relationship with my wife. We start every day with a cup of coffee, and we end every day with a beer. And we sit, everything goes, put on some nice music, and we sit face to face like this, and we drink a really nice cup of coffee. Not like, good coffee. Like, we're connoisseurs of certain things. We're working class, but there are a few things that we like. Coffee and really good beer at the end of the day. And then we talk and we share and we just connect. And we've been doing that for 32 years. Yeah, every day.
Nice. So you would say like your journey of fulfillment, maybe? Fulfillment by the end of your life, that you've made peace,
I
guess?
hope I will have made complete peace. I have moments when I get upset about things, you know. I also have a teacher that really, really just keeps me centered. And I meet with my teacher once a week, and I just go to God in that moment. I'm like really connected to God. Yeah. Do you? Yeah.
How do you define God?
Oh man. Yeah, as a woman, first off, right? Well, it only makes sense, right? Wait, is there a second part? Is that good? Okay, hang on. Hold on to that. First off, it only makes sense. First off, don't put pronouns to God. It's not he or she. Like, don't do it. Like, we do it. This is the thing. We anthropomorphize because we can't see the Creator any other way. So we can only see it through our lens of who we are. It doesn't make sense. This whole thing called creation doesn't make sense to see it like we're looking in a mirror. You know, but little kids do that. But when you're an adult, you stop thinking like a little kid. So don't use he or she. Don't use any pronouns at all. Don't use them, they, he, or she. It just is the isness of the life force, right? So, it's isness, and it's isness. That's how I see God. And so I read a lot of books about people's after-death experiences, and I read about these experiences in other cultures, and every culture has a very similar experience. You know, it's people who die and then they come back into this world. They have very similar experience. They encounter God in the very same way. I don't like to use the word God because because when I use God, it's like, I don't know, bro, it's like it's like if I say God and you're Catholic, you're going to think of God like your priests or whatever, nuns or whoever it is, they talk about God. So I don't want to do that. But anyway, it's isness. And it's amazing.
So my next part is, how does morality factor into that?
In a very, very complicated way. And it factors in by not taking any sides, taking all sides of everything, and never ever believing that you have the answer until you're ready to have the answer. So for me, I feel like maybe, I started my 60s now. Like, I see the world very differently than I did in my 50s and in my 40s and so on. I can see that something in me is shifting in a really awesome, cool way. And you can't describe it. You can't. You have to get there. So, if you make it to your 60s, you'll get there, right? But I'm seeing a way in which those puzzle pieces are going to fit for me. If I can get far enough without really falling victim to grabbing onto some particular way of seeing the world that I'm locked into, right? That's how morality fits. It's very complicated, and it's very awesome. I feel deeply like I'm going to get there, and it's going to be really cool. But hey, do you have? Yeah, okay, go ahead. Anyway, yeah, go ahead, bro.
So I'm sure a lot of people have heard this question before, but if you could have dinner with one person in history, dead or alive, who would you choose and what would you want to talk to them about?
Damn. So this is going to be a really odd question. Okay, the live one would be Henry Kissinger, right? There's just nobody in the 20th that's had an impact on the 20th century like that guy. And I want to know what made him tick and what he saw, right? Dead. This is going to sound cliche-ish, right? In an odd way, but I think for my own personal benefit, I think my father. Yeah. Because I didn't know him. And I've never had much of a desire to know. I was 9 years old when he left my life, when he died. But I'm now at this age in 60 when I feel like there are certain puzzle pieces that I may not be able to understand without a conversation with him. And because he was the youngest, all of his brothers and sisters had gone by the time I was like your age. So like I had no one to really engage with. So yeah, so maybe my father as a way. I think it would be really cool to have that experience. Yeah. Hang on.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So my question is, this is just because of the work I've done as a facilitator. So when you think about all the atrocities that people that look like you have committed in the past,
Yeah.
what do you do with that information? Do you fix it? I mean, I don't know if it's worth fixing. Do you just like ignore it, which most people do? Or do you just like live with it?
Well, so you're asking me?
Yes.
Well, you can imagine that I don't ignore it, right? I mean, if you listen to my classes, you would know I don't ignore it, right? So we can leave that one off.
Yeah.
I also don't feel like I'm the one responsible for fixing it, because if I feel like I'm the one responsible for fixing it, then I'm more likely to burn out and not go the distance, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm more likely to be, how we talked about last class. And when people say, hey, well, these things happen in the world, I can't do anything, and so therefore I just won't do anything and I'll just stop thinking about it, right? I don't do that. So when you feel responsible, you can only have the weight of the world on your shoulders so much before you just got to get the weight off. Mm. Secondly, part of growing and part of being a world, studying the world, has also allowed me to not focus on one particular group of people, but really focus on what's deep within the human consciousness and psyche, so that it's not just people like me, right? In fact, it's atrocities committed by people of every background. And like, oh my God, right? So I talked about the Great War of Africa. In 5 years, it's 5.5 million people were killed, not by anybody who looked like me, right? We had nothing to do with it, except that we helped to create the systems of colonialism that gave rise to this and so on, right? But we didn't commit any of the acts. And so therefore, when I see that, and when I stop thinking like, hang on, don't get small here, get big, start understanding what the connections are to everything, and then, I can also look, so what's unique about what Europe did, and what's unique about what's going on in Asia, and what's unique about what's going on in Africa. And then you start seeing the ways, what the Japanese did prior to World War II and through World War II, and what Chinese did, and what, the Chinese did in Southeast Asia, and what the U.S. did in Southeast. They come from different places. And the more I can understand what those places are, the more I can really address them. And so that's how I approach it all. But it's never not on my mind. Nor is it ever not on my mind the ways in which all of us, me, right? I just look at me, but I also look at all of us, and the two go together. How we're part of these systems that create these things. Yeah. Yeah. And seeing that has helped me to take more and more responsibility. Yeah.
I just wanted to ask, you said you like craft beers. What kind of beers do you like? Are you like an IPA guy, stouts?
I'm currently an IPA guy.
I like IPAs too. Do you have a favorite brewery? Or
yeah, I was telling my guy, I've just discovered this brewery out in San Diego. I don't know what it's called. The California people, what's it called? It's the one out in, it's just pretty common now. I forget what it's called, but really good beers, dude. Yeah.
Cool.
How about you? What's your favorite?
I think I probably like Trogs. I go to this place downtown, A's in McClanahan, and they have like, you can pour your own beers and stuff, and they always have some good stuff there. So I just kind of like trying stuff. I don't really know yet. You're still young. Figuring it out.
All right. Well, Trogs has a very, very good quality beer. Yeah, I don't drink much beer, because when you don't drink much, you got to have quality. Because it's not about getting drunk. I mean, this is just, I don't get drunk anymore. That's old. But yeah. All right, man. Go here and then here.
I have two questions. One's quick, one's a little longer. But my first question is, do you have a favorite quote, and what is it?
Man. I don't have a favorite quote per se. Bro, how is this? We good? I have something on my phone that I look at all the time. And let me see if I can find it. So this is actually kind of cool. In the search for enlightenment, I look at this every day. There is an ever-present certainty that there is more to do, someone else who holds the secret, another state to attain. Okay? So you're searching for enlightenment, you're searching for understanding. There's more to do, there's someone else who holds the secret, there's more to attain, there's more than this, more than that, right? There's always, just keep going. But in finding it, in finding enlightenment, there is the comical revelation that not one of those things was ever true. There isn't someone who has the answer. There isn't one more book to read. There isn't that one person. There isn't more to attain. It's just right here, man. It's right here. Yeah.
That was really cool.
Yeah.
I can give it to him after because the other one's a little longer.
All right.
My question is, do you have like a favorite book or like a book you thought was just most important that you ever read?
Yeah. Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse.
What was it?
Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. It's 110 pages, and I've read it probably 20 times, and every time I read it, there's something. It's allegory for the East and the West coming together and finding God. It's finding this right here. It's this, what I just read. That's what Siddhartha is. 110 pages, man. Really easy.
Cool. Thank you.
You can get it. You can get it free actually at LibriVox. It's an app for books. Dude.
Okay, so this might be a loaded question. I'll start with a question. How do you decide if something is like too sensitive to ask like a student volunteer up here? The reason why I asked this was like there was like a very awkward moment in class where you asked like an Indian volunteer what her caste was, and it was also the same class where you also like talked about Tiananmen Square and like you brought up like how that's like too sensitive to ask Chinese students.
Yeah.
Or like certain topics are too sensitive to Saudi students as well. Like how do you decide like if something is too sensitive to ask students?
Well, so this is a thing that's changing for me, and this might be the thing that I'm working with. So we did a television. We were doing a television series for PBS in this classroom back 10 years ago. Okay, and it was called "You Can't Say That," because I'm always saying things or asking questions that I'm not supposed to ask. Okay. But it was really easy to do that. But things have shifted now, right? Like people have gotten really, I'm pretty good at going with what's happening. I mean, really in touch with what's going on the ground, but it's becoming very difficult to walk in the waters. So I don't know, right? Luckily, I don't have a really too sensitive filter, because if I did, we couldn't do anything we're doing. You know what I mean? Like, come on, man, we couldn't talk about any of this stuff, right? But also, I just know, because I know so much. I don't mean know so much like I'm smart, but I'm so aware of what's going on in different cultures. I know what we can and can't ask. So like I would know never to bring a Chinese student up here and be like, hey, tell me about Tiananmen Square. Like, dude, don't do that. Like I've seen other people do it. Like I wouldn't just never do that. Even for me to talk about it, and I have a lot I'd love to say, but like I don't need to. So I just have a sense of the caste thing. I guess I would just say that I don't know, most Indians I know, that caste, they don't even talk. Young students anyway don't even think about caste in a way. So it's not really awkward so much as it's just like they don't think about it, which it would be. It's very political. But people your age don't think about it, so it's not political. It's a non-issue in a way. But yeah. Anyway, that's a really good question. My wife wishes sometimes that I would be different. but then it wouldn't be interesting. Like there's so much. And here's the other side. The older I get, the more people have the sense that, like, I don't know, they just see me as this old white dude who doesn't really know a lot, maybe doesn't know what's going on. And I'm like, dude, I've been in this for 40 years. I've been at the ground floor. Like, come on, man, you weren't even born. Two of you could have been born by the time I was first talking about, I don't know, like, when I first talked about gender, non-binary issues in a public space, right? Hang on, we still have a couple minutes. Give me another question. Wait. Go ahead, bro. Do you have, here. All right, go there, man. Yeah. You're on. Just push it up. Yeah.
Have you attended many cultural festivals?
Yes.
And if so, which one's your favorite?
Dude, the favorite one that I had here was I went to the Iranian, what is the Iranian New Year's festival, Nowruz? That was pretty cool with like Papa Nowruz, like is anyone in Persian here? Yeah. What do you call him? Papa Nowruz? What do you call the Santa Claus guy that throws money around? But that one, right? And if you have had Persian foods, that was my favorite. I also went to the Haliji Student Association event a while back. That was pretty cool.
All right, I got like one fast one, then one that's related to
okay,
it. Yeah.
This way we have two questions, one really fast one and one quickly related.
So the fast one is, what's your favorite movie?
Yeah, I'm not a movie guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the one that's kind of the bigger one that's a little bit more deep, I guess, is what do you think the significance of like art is, like in general? Like why do people make art?
Dude, art is a way to try to connect to God through forms that come out of the subconscious, right? That to me is what art is. So we're going into the subconscious. We're creating something through our bodies and so on, and we're trying to connect to God. That's what I think it is. Hey, all right, so listen, y'all. Dude, fast question. Last one. Get ready. Yeah.
What do you think is the most significant sociological issue that like our society faces currently and in the coming decades or even century?
I think it's how to manage the ways in which social media comes at us and lodges into our subconsciousness and creates groups, right? Hey, by the way, can we have a round of applause for the class? Especially to all the volunteers. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, dude, that's a good question.